The snow was her grave. Neve was certain of it now. She lay where her mother had left her, curled against a frozen oak at the edge of the thornwood, her thin nightgown soaked through, her fingers blue, and her breath coming in shallow clouds that grew weaker with each passing moment. The blizzard had stopped an hour ago, or perhaps it had been 3 hours. Time meant nothing when you were dying. "You are no daughter of mine." Her mother's words echoed in the hollow of her chest, colder than the frost crawling up her limbs. 21 years of obedience, of hiding, of being exactly what they needed her to be. And still, one mistake had been enough. One moment of losing control, and Ravenna had dragged her from bed in the dead of night, thrown her into the snow and locked the gates behind her. No shoes, no cloak, no mercy. Neve's eyes fluttered closed. Perhaps this was better. Perhaps the cold was kinder than the life that awaited her if she survived. A life of running, of hiding what she truly was, of knowing that anyone who saw her deepest truth would recoil in horror. "Let me sleep," she thought. "Just let me sleep." But the wolves had other plans. She heard them before she saw them. The crunch of paws on frozen ground, the low rumble of breath, the unmistakable presence of predators circling. Neve forced her eyes open and found herself surrounded. 12 wolves, massive, silver-furred, their eyes gleaming gold in the pre-dawn light. And they were not wild. Their formation was too precise, their postures too controlled. These were shifters, royal wolves. The largest stepped forward and regarded her with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. Then a voice cut through the silence, deep and cold as the grave she'd been prepared to accept. "Bring her." By nightfall, Neve would stand before the Alpha King of Valdmir. By week's end, she would be his wife. He would offer her protection, warmth, a crown, everything she had never dared to dream of. He would promise to shelter her secrets, to never force her to reveal what she truly was. But he made one condition absolutely clear. He would never love her. Neither of them understood how impossible that vow would be. 12 hours earlier. The Ashworth estate had never been warm, but tonight it felt like a tomb. Neve sat at the edge of her bed, braiding her dark hair by candlelight, listening to the wind howl against the windows. The blizzard had been building since sundown. By morning, the roads would be impassable. She should have felt safe, sheltered. Instead, dread coiled in her stomach like a serpent. Something was wrong. She had felt it all evening. At dinner, her mother had watched her with an expression Neve couldn't name. Not anger, not disappointment. Something worse, something calculating. And her sister Isadora had refused to meet her eyes at all. "You're being paranoid," Neve told herself. "You've hidden for this long. They don't know. They can't know." But even as she thought it, she remembered yesterday afternoon. The hunt her sister had organized, the way the deer had startled, and Neve's wolf had surged forward without permission, desperate to chase. She had controlled it. Barely. She had not shifted. But for one heartbeat, her eyes had changed. Gold. Bright, burning gold. And Isadora had been watching. A knock at her door made Neve's pulse race. Before she could answer, it swung open. Her mother stood in the doorway. Ravenna Ashworth was 53 years old and looked 40, with silver-streaked auburn hair and the kind of bone structure that made lesser women weep with envy. She had been beautiful once, and she weaponized what remained of that beauty with precision. Tonight, she wore her winter cloak, fur-lined and immaculate, as if she were preparing for a journey. "Mother?" Neve rose. "Is something—" "Come with me," Ravenna said. Her voice was flat, empty. "What? Where? It's the middle of the night and the storm." "Now, Neve." The command in her tone left no room for argument. Neve grabbed her shawl, wrapping it around her nightgown, and followed her mother down the stairs. The house was silent. No servants in the corridors, no guards at the doors. That was wrong. There were always guards. They passed through the kitchens, through the servants' quarters, and out a side door Neve had not used since childhood. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Snow swirled around them, biting at her exposed skin. She was barefoot. She was barely dressed, and her mother was leading her away from the house toward the tree line. "Mother, stop!" Neve grabbed Ravenna's arm. "What is this? Where are we going?" Her mother turned. In the moonlight filtered through storm clouds, her face was a mask of stone. "You should have told me what you were," Ravenna said quietly. "I would have dealt with it quietly, arranged something. But you let me discover it from Isadora instead." The world tilted. "Mother, I don't know what she told you, but she mentioned she saw your eyes change during the hunt. Gold. Like a beast." Ravenna's lip curled. "So I looked into it. I spoke to the old healer. I described what Isadora had seen. Do you know what she told me?" Neve couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "She told me there's only one kind of wolf whose eyes burn gold before the shift, the kind that shifts white." Ravenna stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "A snow wolf, a death omen, the kind of creature that curses every pack it joins. Is it true?" Tears froze on Neve's cheeks as they fell. "Answer me!" Ravenna seized her shoulders. "When you shift, is your wolf white?" "Yes," Neve choked out. "But mother, it's just superstition. I would never hurt." The slap cracked across her face like a whip. "Superstition?" Ravenna hissed. "Your father died 6 months after you were born. Your brother drowned when you were 10. Every misfortune this family has suffered can be traced back to you. That's not... I kept you anyway." Her mother's voice broke, just barely, before hardening again. "I raised you despite what you cost me. I gave you everything. And this is what you've been hiding? This is what you are? I am your daughter. You are a curse wearing my daughter's face." Ravenna released her and stepped back. Only then did Neve realize where they were, the edge of the thornwood, the boundary of their territory. Beyond this tree line lay unclaimed wilderness, miles of frozen forest that belonged to no pack. Miles of certain death in a blizzard. "Mother." Neve's voice shattered. "Mother, please, I'll leave. I'll go somewhere far away, where no one knows. I'll never come back. Just give me until morning. Give me a cloak. Give me shoes. Please." "I am giving you a mercy," Ravenna said coldly. "The cold will take you quickly. It's more than a death omen deserves." She turned and walked away. Neve tried to follow. Her legs buckled after 3 steps. The cold was already seeping into her bones, her bare feet burning against the frozen ground. "Mother!" she screamed. Ravenna did not look back. The last thing Neve saw before the storm swallowed her was her childhood home, warm lights glowing in distant windows, doors locked against her forever. Then there was only snow, only cold, only the slow surrender of a body that had never been wanted. Dawn found her dying, but dawn also brought the wolves. Neve's first thought when she saw them was, "Finally. Let it be quick." Wolves in the wild were not known for mercy. They would tear her apart, and it would hurt. But it would be faster than freezing, faster than the slow fade she'd been surrendering to. But the wolves did not attack. The largest, a silver-gray male with a scar across his muzzle, approached her slowly. His golden eyes held an intelligence that sent a shiver through her. He lowered his massive head and sniffed her, his nose pressing against her frozen cheek. Then he made a sound she did not expect. A whine, low, concerned, almost gentle. Another wolf circled behind her. She felt the heat of its body pressing against her back, offering warmth. A third lay down beside her, and a fourth, until she was surrounded not by predators, but by a living cocoon of fur and warmth. Royal wolves, she realized dimly. Valdmir's wolves. She had heard stories. The Alpha King's pack was legendary, wolves so bonded to their king that they patrolled his borders with an almost supernatural awareness. They answered to no one but him, and they had found her. The scarred wolf lifted his head and howled. The sound split the frozen dawn like a blade. It echoed through the trees, carrying for miles. A summons, a signal. Minutes passed. Neve drifted in and out of consciousness, her body slowly thawing against the wolf's warmth. She should be afraid. She should be planning an escape. But she had nothing left. No strength. No hope. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. The jingle of harnesses. Voices calling out in the distance. The wolves rose as one, parting to reveal a company of riders emerging from the tree line. Soldiers in black and silver livery, their cloaks embroidered with a wolf's head crowned in thorns, the sigil of House Valdmir. At their head rode a man who could only be the Alpha King. Ridian of Valdmir was not what the stories described. The rumors spoke of a monster. A king so cold that his own court feared to meet his eyes. A man who had buried 2 wives before his 30th year and showed no grief for either. They called him the Frost King behind his back, said his heart had turned to ice years ago, said he was more wolf than man and twice as merciless. The man before her was all of that, and he was devastating. Tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of a winter night, black shot through with silver at the temples, though he could not be older than 32 or 33. His features were sharp and aristocratic, beautiful in the way that a blade was beautiful, designed for damage. And his eyes, pale gray, nearly colorless, swept over her with the detached assessment of a man examining broken furniture. He dismounted in one fluid motion and approached the wolves. "Report," he said. The scarred wolf shifted. Where a beast had stood, now there was a man, naked and unbothered by the cold, kneeling before his king. "We found her at the tree line, Your Majesty, near frozen. No pack scent, no identification. She was left to die." "By whom?" "Unknown, but she came from the south. Ashworth territory." Something flickered in the king's expression. Interest, perhaps, or simply calculation. He walked toward Neve, his boots crunching on the snow. She tried to rise, tried to show some dignity, but her legs refused to cooperate. She collapsed back against the frozen ground, shivering violently. Ridian stopped directly above her. His shadow fell across her face. "Look at me," he commanded. Neve forced her eyes upward. It took every ounce of strength she had left. Their gazes met, and she felt the impact like a physical blow. His eyes were not empty, as she had first thought. They were controlled. There was something vast and dangerous contained behind that pale gray stare, something held in check by sheer force of will. He studied her for a long moment. His nostrils flared slightly, scenting her. And then his brow furrowed. "What is your name?" he asked. "Neve," she managed through chattering teeth. "Neve Ashworth." "Ashworth." He repeated the name as if tasting something bitter. "Ravenna's territory." "Yes? And Ravenna left you here to die?" Neve's chest tightened. She could lie. She could protect the woman who had thrown her away like garbage. She could preserve some scrap of family loyalty. But she was so tired of lying. "My mother cast me out," she said. "Because of what I am." The king's expression did not change, but the wolves around her went very still. "And what are you?" Ridian asked quietly. Neve closed her eyes. "This is it. He'll kill me himself, or he'll leave me here to finish dying. Either way, it ends." "I'm a white wolf," she whispered. "A death omen. A curse." Silence stretched between them, vast and terrible. Then Ridian of Valdmir did something that made no sense at all. He laughed. It was not a warm sound. It was dark, bitter, edged with something she could not name, but it was laughter nonetheless. A death omen, he repeated. Is that what they told you? Neve opened her eyes, confused. The king crouched down until they were nearly level. This close she could see the faint scars on his jaw, the shadows beneath his eyes, the weight he carried in every line of his face. I have been cursed since birth, he said softly. My heart has been freezing since I was 7 years old, when my mother died. The kingdom calls me the Frost King, and they're not wrong. The ice spreads a little more each year. He paused, his jaw tightening. My 2 wives died because I began to care for them. The curse doesn't just freeze me. It strikes down anyone I start to love, long before I can fully surrender my heart. His pale eyes held hers without flinching. So tell me, little omen, what could you possibly curse that is not already damned? Neve could not speak, could not think. Ridian straightened and turned to his men. Wrap her in furs, put her in my carriage. She's coming back to the palace. The scarred wolf, still in human form, stepped forward. Your Majesty, with respect, we don't know anything about her. If she truly is she is half dead, alone, and abandoned by her own blood. Ridian's voice cut like a frozen blade. She is no threat to anyone. But the superstition is precisely that. Superstition. The king mounted his horse and looked down at Neve with an expression she could not read. I have use for a woman no one else wants. She stays. Before she lost consciousness entirely, Neve heard one of the soldiers mutter to another. Gods help her. She has no idea what she's walking into. He was right. She didn't. 3 days passed before Neve was strong enough to leave her bed. They had given her a room in the eastern wing of the palace, a chamber larger than her entire suite at the Ashworth estate. The walls were dark stone softened by tapestries depicting winter hunts, the bed piled high with furs, a fire roaring constantly in the hearth. Servants came and went, bringing food, drawing baths, checking her temperature with gentle, efficient hands. No one told her why she was here. No one told her what the king wanted, and no one answered when she asked what would happen next. On the 4th morning, a woman arrived who was different from the others. She was perhaps 60, steel-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed in the black and silver of the royal household. She introduced herself as Matilda, the king's head of staff, and informed Neve that His Majesty would see her within the hour. You will bathe and dress appropriately, Matilda said. It was not a suggestion. Neve bathed. Servants brushed her hair until it gleamed. They dressed her in a gown of deep blue velvet, finer than anything she had ever owned, with silver embroidery at the cuffs and collar. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked like someone who belonged in a palace. Lies, Neve thought. All of it. Matilda escorted her through corridors that seemed to stretch for miles. The palace was a maze of stone and shadow, beautiful in a severe way, every surface polished to perfection, but somehow cold despite the fires burning in every hearth. They stopped before a set of massive oak doors, guarded by 2 soldiers who looked like they could snap her in half without effort. The council chamber, Matilda said. His Majesty awaits. When you enter, curtsy, wait to be addressed, and speak only when spoken to. Is that clear? Yes. The doors swung open. The chamber was vast, dominated by a long table surrounded by men in fine clothing. Advisors, Neve realized. Lords, perhaps. They turned as she entered, their expressions ranging from curious to contemptuous. And at the head of the table sat Ridian. He looked different today. No traveling clothes, no fur-lined cloak. He wore black, simply cut but clearly expensive, and a thin silver circlet rested on his dark hair. The crown of Waldmere. It should have made him look regal. Instead, it made him look like a beautiful nightmare. Neve curtsied as Matilda had instructed. Her legs trembled, but she held the pose until he spoke. Rise. She straightened. The king's pale eyes swept over her with the same detached assessment she remembered from the forest. "You look better," he observed, "less like a corpse." One of the advisors made a strangled sound. Ridian ignored him. "I have a proposition for you, Neve Ashworth," the king continued. "One I suspect you will find unusual. But before I make it, I must know, do you have any attachment to your former life? Any desire to return to your mother's territory?" Neve's hands clenched at her sides. "My mother threw me out to die," she said quietly. "I have no life to return to." "Good." He said it without emotion, as if her tragedy were merely a convenient fact. "Then you have nothing to lose by hearing my offer." He gestured to a servant who brought forward a document and placed it on the table. "My kingdom requires an heir," Ridian said. "My advisors have made it clear that I must marry again, despite my history. Despite the rather inconvenient fact that my previous wives did not survive the experience." Murmurs rippled through the assembled lords. One man, older and red-faced, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty," he began, "perhaps we should discuss this in private." "No." Ridian's voice was ice. "She deserves to know what she is being offered, and what she is risking." He turned back to Neve. "I am cursed," he said simply. "The ice in my veins spreads a little more each year. And if I ever truly fall in love—" He paused. "The curse will consume me entirely. That's what killed my ancestors. Not battle, not illness. Love." His jaw tightened. "The moment a king of Valdmir surrenders his heart, the curse takes him. My wives died because the curse sensed my growing affection and struck them down as warning. I will not let that happen again." Neve's chest tightened. "I chose you because you were dying," he said quietly. "Because you were abandoned, desperate, with nowhere else to go. I thought—" He paused. "I thought a woman with nothing would expect nothing, that she would be grateful for shelter and safety and would not make the mistake of wanting more." "You chose me because you thought I couldn't love you," Neve whispered. "Yes." The honesty was brutal, but she found she preferred it to pretty lies. "My terms are these," Ridian said. "You will be my wife, my queen. You will have every comfort, every protection, and every luxury the crown can provide. I will shelter your secret, whatever it is that made your mother cast you out. No one in my kingdom will ever see you shift. You will never have to reveal what you are." Neve's heartbeat thundered against her ribs. "And in return," she managed, "in return, you will give me heirs. You will appear beside me at official functions. You will play the role of queen when required." His jaw tightened. "And you will never, under any circumstances, allow yourself to love me." The words hung in the air between them. "Because if you do," Ridian finished, "I might love you back. And that would kill us both." Neve should have been afraid. She should have refused, fled, found some other path forward. But she thought of the snow, the cold. Her mother's back, walking away without a glance. Cold over cruelty. Something whispered in her mind. Choose cold over cruelty every time. "I accept," she said. The advisors erupted. "Your Majesty, this is madness. We know nothing about this girl. Her family threw her away." Ridian silenced them with a look. "She has no allies, no resources, no one who will come looking for her. She is exactly what I need." He turned back to Neve. "You understand the terms? Truly?" "Yes." "And you accept them, knowing what you are agreeing to?" "I accept," Neve repeated, her voice steady now. "Your Majesty offers me safety when I had none, protection when I was hunted, a life when I was meant to die. I will honor my end of the bargain." A shadow crossed Ridian's features. Confusion, perhaps, or the faintest flicker of respect. "You don't seem afraid," he said. "I was afraid when my mother left me in the snow," Neve replied. I was afraid when I thought the wolves would tear me apart. But this? She met his pale gaze without flinching. This is just a contract. I've survived worse than a loveless marriage. For a long moment, the king simply stared at her. Then, so quietly that only she could hear, he murmured, "Perhaps you have." He stepped back and addressed the room. "The wedding will take place in 5 days. Prepare the cathedral. Inform the kingdom." His voice carried no joy, no anticipation, only resolution. Valdemar will have its queen. As the advisors scattered to fulfill his commands, one man lingered. He was younger than the others, handsome in a polished way, with dark hair and calculating eyes. He approached Neve with a smile that did not reach those eyes. "My lady," he said smoothly, "I am Lord Cressida, His Majesty's cousin and closest advisor. Allow me to be the first to offer my congratulations." "Thank you," Neve said carefully. "I must say, you've made quite an impression. A woman with no family, no connections, no dowry, and a secret so terrible her own mother wanted her dead." His smile widened. "One might wonder what His Majesty sees in such a creature." Neve's blood ran cold. "But I'm sure it will all become clear in time," Cressida continued. "Secrets have a way of surfacing in this palace, and when yours does—" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I do hope the king's protection proves as reliable as he promises." He walked away before she could respond. Neve stood alone in the emptying chamber, her stomach tight with unease. 5 days until the wedding. 5 days until she became queen. And already, the wolves were circling. The days before the wedding passed in a blur of fittings, lessons, and thinly veiled scrutiny. Neve was measured for gowns she had never dreamed of wearing. She was tutored in court etiquette by a severe woman named Lady Orinth, who seemed personally offended by her lack of noble breeding. She was paraded before an endless stream of servants, advisors, and minor lords, all of whom studied her like a puzzle they could not solve. And through it all, Lord Cressida watched. He was never far. At meals he sat 3 chairs down, his dark eyes following her every movement. In the corridors she would turn a corner and find him there, offering a smile that made her skin crawl. He never said anything overtly threatening. He didn't need to. His presence alone was a reminder that she was being observed, catalogued, waiting to be exposed. On the 4th day, Neve was summoned to the Great Hall for what Matilda called a formal introduction to the court. The hall was vast, and its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with portraits of Valdemar kings stretching back generations. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, dressed in their finest, their whispers rising like smoke. They fell silent as Neve entered. She walked alone down the center aisle, her blue gown trailing behind her, her pulse racing so fast she was certain everyone could hear it. At the far end of the hall, on a raised dais, sat Ridian. He looked carved from marble, beautiful, remote, untouchable. The silver circlet gleamed against his dark hair, and his pale eyes tracked her approach with an expression she could not read. Neve reached the dais and curtsied deeply. "Rise," Ridian commanded. She straightened. The silence in the hall was suffocating. "Lords and ladies of Valdemar," Ridian said, his voice carrying effortlessly, "I present to you Neve Ashworth, who in 2 days' time will become your queen." The reaction was immediate. Whispers erupted, scandalized and eager. Neve caught fragments. Ashworth? That minor territory? No dowry, no alliance. "I heard she was found half dead in the snow." One voice rose above the rest. "Your Majesty." Lord Cressida stepped forward from the crowd, his tone dripping with false concern. "Forgive my impertinence, but surely the court deserves to know more about our future queen, her lineage, her accomplishments, her circumstances." The emphasis on the last word made Neve's stomach clench. Her circumstances are not your concern, Ridian said coolly. But your majesty, there are rumors. Cressida spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. They say she was cast out by her own mother. They say there is something wrong with her. Something her family found so abhorrent that they... Enough. The single word cracked through the hall like thunder. Ridian rose from his throne, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Neve saw nobles shrink back, saw Cressida's confident smile falter. You speak of rumors, Ridian said, descending the dais steps with predatory grace. Allow me to address them directly. He stopped beside Neve. His hand came to rest on the small of her back, and she nearly gasped at the cold that seeped through her gown. His touch was ice, actual ice, as if winter lived beneath his skin. But his voice was steady, commanding. This woman was abandoned to die in a blizzard, he said. Her own blood left her to freeze. And when my wolves found her, do you know what she did? He paused, letting the silence stretch. She did not beg. She did not weep. She looked death in the face and accepted it with more dignity than half the nobles in this room have ever shown. Neve's breath caught. Whatever her family believed about her, whatever superstitions drove them to such cruelty, they are irrelevant, Ridian continued. I have chosen her. I will marry her. And anyone who questions that choice questions me. His pale eyes swept the hall, cold and merciless. Does anyone wish to question me? Silence. Absolute crushing silence. Lord Cressida bowed his head. Of course not, Your Majesty. I merely wish to ensure... You wish to humiliate her, Ridian interrupted. You failed. Do not make the attempt again. He turned to Neve, and for just a moment, a flicker of warmth crossed his features. Not softness, exactly, but acknowledgement. Recognition. Come, he said quietly. I'll escort you back to your chambers. They walked together through the parting crowd, his hand still resting against her back. Neve could feel every eye on them, could hear the whispers resuming the moment they passed, but she could also feel something else. His protection. Real and tangible and unlike anything she had ever known. When they reached the corridor beyond the hall, Ridian released her and stepped away. You handled that well, he said. I didn't handle anything. You did. You didn't cry, you didn't crumble. That's more than most would manage under Cressida's scrutiny. He studied her. He will not stop, you know. He believes he should have been king. He resents anyone who stands between him and the throne. Is he dangerous? Everyone in this palace is dangerous. Ridian's voice was matter-of-fact. Including me. Neve met his gaze. You defended me. In front of everyone. I protected my investment. But something in his tone rang false, as if he were reciting lines he no longer believed. Do not read more into it than exists. He turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the cold corridor. But Neve could still feel the ghost of his hand on her back, and she could still hear the conviction in his voice when he'd called her dignified. He doesn't want to care, she realized. But he does. Just a little. Despite himself. It was a dangerous thought. She buried it deep. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and bitter. Snow fell in thick curtains beyond the palace windows, blanketing the kingdom in white. The servants called it an omen, though they could not agree whether it was good or ill. Neve thought it fitting. She had been born from snow. Reborn from it too. Perhaps it was only right that her marriage begin the same way. The blind seamstresses arrived at dawn. Neve had requested them specifically, and Ridian had agreed without question. They dressed her in layers of white silk and silver embroidery, their gentle hands working by touch alone. A veil of delicate lace was pinned to her dark hair, heavy enough to obscure her features, light enough to allow her to see. No one would glimpse her face until she chose to reveal it. It was a small protection, but it was hers. Matilda escorted her to the cathedral. The building was ancient, its spires reaching toward the stormy sky like frozen fingers. Inside, thousands of candles burned against the gloom, their light reflecting off the snow that had drifted through gaps in the ancient stonework. The pews were packed. Every noble in Valdemir had come to witness the impossible. The Frost King taking a third wife. And there, at the altar, stood Ridian. He wore black, as always, but today his clothing was trimmed in silver, and the crown on his head was larger, more elaborate. He looked like something from a dark fairy tale, a cursed prince waiting for a maiden who could not save him. Neve walked toward him alone. No father to give her away, no family to witness her vows. She had only herself, her secrets, and the fragile hope that this bargain might actually save her. The priest began the ceremony. His words washed over her like distant music, familiar but meaningless. She was too aware of Ridian beside her, of the cold radiating from his body, of the weight of 1,000 watching eyes. Then came the vows. Do you, Ridian of House Valdemir, Alpha King of this realm, take this woman to be your wife, your queen, your mate? I do. His voice was steady, betraying nothing. The priest turned to Neve. And do you, Neve of House Ashworth, take this man to be your husband, your king, your mate? I do. Then speak the words of binding. Ridian faced her. Through the veil she could see his pale eyes, could feel the intensity of his focus. I claim you as mine, he said, my wife, my queen, my mate. I vow to protect you, to shelter you, to provide for you until death parts us. Emotion swelled in Neve's chest. Until death parts us. For him, those words carried a terrible weight. I claim you as mine, she echoed. My husband, my king, my mate. I vow to honor you, to stand beside you, to share your burdens until death parts us. The priest smiled. The bond is spoken. Now seal it with a kiss. The crowd leaned forward. This was what they had come to see. Would the mysterious bride finally reveal her face? Would the king demand it? Ridian stepped closer. His hand rose toward her veil. Neve's heart stopped. He's going to lift it. He's going to see me. He's going to... But his fingers stopped at the edge of the lace. They rested there for a moment, trembling almost imperceptibly. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lifted her hand instead. He raised her gloved fingers to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The touch was cold, achingly cold, but gentle. So impossibly gentle. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. He didn't lift the veil. Why didn't he look at her? What is he hiding? What is she hiding? Neve stared at him through the lace, her eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. You asked me to protect your secret, Ridian said quietly. Did you think I would break that promise on our wedding day? I thought... She swallowed hard. I didn't know what to think. Now you do. He released her hand but held her gaze. Whatever happens, Neve, I will honor our bargain, even when it costs me. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly. I present to you King Ridian and Queen Neve of Valdemir. Long may they reign. The cheers that followed were half-hearted, confused. The crowd had wanted spectacle, revelation. Instead, they had witnessed something they could not understand. But Neve understood. He had defended her in the Great Hall. He had kissed her hand instead of demanding her face. He had kept every promise, honored every boundary. Cold over cruelty, she thought again. But this doesn't feel cold anymore. That realization frightened her more than anything else. The wedding night arrived with the weight of inevitability. Neve sat in her new chambers, the Queen's suite, a sprawling series of rooms connected to the king's quarters by a single door. The blind maids had prepared her, bathing her in water scented with winter roses, brushing her hair until it fell in dark waves down her back, dressing her in a nightgown of ivory silk so thin it felt like wearing air. Then they had left her alone. The fire crackled in the hearth, but Neve could not get warm. She sat on the edge of the massive bed, her hands folded in her lap, trying to control the trembling that had started the moment the door closed. He said he needs heirs, she reminded herself. This is part of the bargain. This is what I agreed to. But knowing something and feeling it were very different things. 3 soft knocks made her jump. "Come in," she managed. The door opened and Ridian entered. He had changed from his wedding clothes into something simpler. A white shirt unlaced at the collar, dark trousers, and bare feet. His crown was gone. His hair was loose around his shoulders. He looked younger like this, almost vulnerable. He closed the door behind him and stood very still, studying her from across the room. "You're afraid," he observed. "A little," Neve admitted. There was no point in lying. He could probably smell it on her. "I will not force you." His voice was quiet, serious. "Whatever the terms of our arrangement, I will not take what is not freely given. If you need more time..." "No." Neve rose to her feet. "No, I don't need more time, I'm just..." She laughed shakily. "I've never done this before." His expression flickered with surprise. "Never?" "I was the cursed daughter, the death omen." Her smile was bitter. No one wanted to get close enough to risk it. Ridian was silent for a long moment. Then he walked toward her, slowly, giving her every opportunity to retreat. When she didn't move, he stopped an arm's length away. "I have something that might help," he said. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a strip of black silk. Neve frowned. "What is that?" "A blindfold?" He held it out to her. "I know you fear being seen, what you truly are, what you've hidden. If it would make tonight easier, I will wear this. I will touch you, but I will not look at you. Not unless you ask me to." Warmth bloomed in Neve's chest, the thoughtfulness of it, the care. This was not the cold, emotionless king the world described. This was something else entirely. "You would do that?" she whispered. "I told you I would protect your secrets." He pressed the blindfold into her hands. "I meant it." Neve's fingers closed around the silk. It was soft, warm from his pocket, so different from the ice of his skin. "Turn around," she said. He obeyed without hesitation. Neve stepped closer, rising on her toes to reach. She tied the blindfold carefully, her fingers brushing against his hair, his temples, and the strong line of his jaw. Up close, she could see details she had missed before. A small scar beneath his ear, the silver threads at his temples more numerous than she had realized, the tension in his shoulders that never seemed to ease. "Is it secure?" he asked. "Yes." She stepped back. He stood perfectly still, blindfolded and waiting, trusting her completely. The last candle guttered. Darkness fell like a curtain. In the blackness, Neve heard him move closer, felt the temperature drop as his body neared hers. "I can hear your heartbeat," he murmured. "It's racing." "Can you blame me?" "No." His hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers cold but impossibly gentle. "But I need you to tell me if anything frightens you, if anything feels wrong. Can you do that?" "Yes." He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. The cold of his lips made her shiver, but not from fear. Something else entirely. "May I touch you?" he asked. "Yes." His hands rose slowly, settling on her shoulders. The chill seeped through the thin silk of her nightgown, making her gasp. But beneath the cold was something warm, something careful, and something that made her want to lean into him rather than pull away. His thumbs traced slow circles against her skin, soothing, patient. "You're so warm," he said softly, "like summer. And you're like winter. Does it bother you?" "No." And she meant it. The contrast was strange, but not unpleasant. It made her aware of every place their bodies met, every point of contact. His fingers slid beneath the straps of her nightgown, questioning, waiting. "Yes," she breathed. He lowered the straps with aching slowness, his fingertips trailing fire despite their cold. The silk whispered down her body and pooled at her feet. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Rydian's hands found her waist, and he pulled her gently toward him. Their bodies pressed together, his chest against hers, his stomach against hers, and they both gasped at the sensation. Cold and warmth, ice and fire. Neve. He breathed against her hair. It was the first time he had said her name like that. Not as a king addressing a subject, but as a man addressing a woman. Someone real. Someone who mattered. He guided her to the bed, laying her down with such care that her throat tightened. His body covered hers, and she felt the solid weight of him, protective and overwhelming. His lips found the curve of her neck, kissing softly, learning her. "Tell me what you want," he murmured. "I don't know." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I've never known. Then we'll discover it together." And they did. He was patient, gentle. He asked permission before every new touch, paused at every sign of tension, adjusted to every gasp and sigh. The cold of his skin and the warmth of hers created sensations she had never imagined. Pleasure building slowly like heat in her belly. When they finally joined, there was a moment of discomfort that made her tense. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe." She breathed. The discomfort faded, and what replaced it was something beyond words. Connection, completion, a sense of being truly known, even in the darkness, even with secrets still between them. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both trembling. His arm was wrapped around her waist, holding her close. His breath was warm against her hair despite the cold of his skin. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For trusting me." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "I know it wasn't easy." Neve turned in his arms, facing him even though neither could see. Her hand found his face, tracing the edge of the blindfold. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why are you so cold? Physically, I mean. Alphas are supposed to run hot, but you're like ice." He went very still. "It's part of the curse," he said finally. "It freezes me from the inside, slowly, a little more each year." His voice dropped. "And if I ever truly fall in love, the ice will consume me completely. That's what killed my ancestors. Not battle, not illness, love. The moment a king of Valdmir surrenders his heart, the curse takes him." Neve's heart clenched. "Is there a cure?" "No." The word was final, absolute. "There is no cure. There is only survival. And the promise I made to never let anyone close enough to matter." She felt the blindfold against her fingers, felt the trust he had placed in her by wearing it. "I won't love you," she said softly. "I gave you my word." "I know." But something in his voice sounded almost sad. "I know you did." He held her tighter, and despite the cold of his body, Neve felt warmer than she had in her entire life. "This is dangerous," she thought. "This is how it starts. This is how people fall." But she didn't pull away. Weeks turned to months. Winter deepened, then slowly began to release its grip. And every night, without fail, Rydian came to her chambers. At first, it was purely contractual. He arrived after dark, stayed until dawn approached, then left before the servants could witness him emerging from her rooms. They never spoke of feelings. They barely spoke at all, those first weeks, communicating instead through touch and breath and the language of bodies learning each other. But gradually, things changed. It started with small things. He began arriving earlier, sometimes before dinner, sharing meals with her in her private sitting room. He asked about her day, what she had read, what she had observed about his court. She asked about his kingdom, his challenges, the weight he carried. One evening, he told her about the trade disputes with the eastern territories. They want access to our mountain passes, he explained, stretched beside her on the bed, his fingers idly tracing patterns on her arm. But they refuse to acknowledge our sovereignty over the Thornwood border. The Thornwood? Neve's stomach tightened. That's where your wolves found me. I know. His hand stilled. It's technically unclaimed territory, but we've patrolled it for generations. If the Eastern Lords gain control, they could use it as a staging ground. For what? Invasion. Eventually. His voice was grim. The East has always wanted Valdemir. Our mines, our ports, our military strength. The only reason they haven't moved against us is because they fear what I might do in response. Neve turned to face him in the darkness. And what might you do? Whatever is necessary to protect my people. There was no hesitation in his voice, no doubt. I've made peace with being feared, Neve. Fear keeps my kingdom safe. Fear keeps... He stopped. Keeps what? Keeps everyone at a distance. His voice dropped. Which is better? Safer? For them. She heard what he wasn't saying. The curse. The isolation. The terrible loneliness of being a king no one could love. Her hand found his chest, resting over his heart. Even through his shirt she could feel the cold radiating from him. And was it her imagination, or was he colder tonight than he had been a week ago? You're freezing, she whispered. I'm always freezing. More than usual. I can feel it. Ridian was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly she almost missed it, he said, It's getting worse. The curse? Yes. He exhaled slowly. Every year the cold spreads a little further. It started in my heart when I was 7, when my mother died. By 20, it had reached my chest. Now it's in my bones, my blood. A bitter laugh. Eventually, there won't be enough warmth left to keep me alive. How long? I don't know. Years, perhaps. Or months. The progression isn't predictable. A lump formed in Neva's throat. She pressed closer to him, trying to share her warmth, knowing it wasn't enough. There has to be a cure, she said. There has to be something. There isn't. His arm tightened around her. I've had scholars searching for decades. Every witch, every healer, every ancient text. Nothing. The curse was designed to be unbreakable. By whom? I don't know. It's been in my bloodline for 7 generations. No one remembers who cast it or why. Only that every king of Valdemir is doomed to freeze, and anyone who gets too close risks dying with them. His voice hardened. Which is why our arrangement works. You won't love me. I won't love you. And we'll both survive. Too late, Neve thought, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. I think it's already too late. Because lying here in the darkness, listening to him speak of his pain with such resigned acceptance, feeling the cold of his body and the warmth of his care, Neve understood the truth she had been avoiding for weeks. She was falling in love with him, not because he was king, not because he had saved her, but because beneath the ice, beneath the walls, beneath the curse that had taught him to expect nothing, he was kind. He was thoughtful. He noticed when she was struggling and found ways to ease her burden without ever making her feel weak. He had given her blind servants so she could be seen without being exposed. He had defended her before the entire court. He had worn a blindfold on their wedding night so she could feel safe. He had done everything possible to keep his distance, and somehow, in doing so, he had made her want to close it. I'm falling in love with a man who cannot love me back without dying, she thought. And I'm falling anyway. It was terrifying. It was also unstoppable. Ridian, she whispered. Tell him. Tell him now. Warn him to stay away before it's too late. But the words wouldn't come, because if she told him, he would stop coming, He would rebuild his walls, retreat behind his crown, and become the cold king the world expected him to be. And she wasn't ready to lose him. Not yet. Nothing, she said. Just stay a little longer tonight. His arm tightened around her. I'll stay as long as you want. That's the problem, Neve thought. I want you to stay forever. 3 months after their wedding, Neve discovered she was pregnant. The healer confirmed it on a gray morning, her weathered face splitting into a rare smile. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Valdemir will have an heir. Neve sat very still, her hand pressed against her stomach. A child. Rydian's child. A tiny life growing inside her, half ice and half fire. Does the king know? She asked. Not yet, Your Majesty. I thought you would want to tell him yourself. That night, Neve waited until they were curled together in the darkness, Rydian's cold body pressed against her back, his breath slow and even against her hair. I have something to tell you, she said quietly. He shifted, suddenly alert. What is it? Is something wrong? No. She turned in his arms, finding his face with her hands. Even now, she kept the blindfold in place. He had never asked her to remove it. Nothing is wrong. Everything is wonderful. She took his hand and pressed it against her stomach. For a long moment, Rydian didn't move, didn't breathe. Then his fingers spread wide, cradling the place where their child grew. You're certain? His voice was strange, thick. The healer confirmed it this morning. A child. He said the word like a prayer. We're having a child. Yes. And then something happened that Neve had never witnessed. Rydian, the Frost King, the man who had buried his emotions so deep that even his scent betrayed nothing, began to tremble. Rydian? She cupped his face. What's wrong? Nothing. But his voice cracked. Nothing is wrong. I never thought... Never thought what? That I would have this. He pulled her closer, his face buried against her hair. A child. A family. Someone who might look at me someday and see something other than a monster. Neve's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. Our child will love you, she said fiercely. They will know their father is brave and kind and good. You can't promise that. The curse. I don't care about the curse. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. I don't care about the cold or the danger or any of it. I only care about you. Rydian went very still. Neve, he whispered. What are you saying? She should stop. She should retreat, rebuild her walls, protect them both from what she was about to confess. But she was so tired of hiding. So tired of pretending that every moment with him didn't feel like coming home. I'm saying I love you, she breathed. I know I promised I wouldn't. I know it's dangerous. But I love you, Rydian. I have for months. Silence stretched between them, vast and terrible. Then his hands found her face, cupping her cheeks with desperate tenderness. I love you too, he said, the words rough and broken. God's help me. I tried not to. I tried so hard. But you're everything, Neve. Everything I never let myself want. Joy exploded in her chest. She pulled him closer, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted like tears and hope and... Rydian gasped. His body jerked violently. His hands flew to his chest, clawing at the fabric of his shirt. The temperature in the room plummeted. Rydian! Neve scrambled upright. Rydian, what's happening? He couldn't answer. His face had gone white, whiter than snow, whiter than bone. Frost was spreading visibly across his skin, climbing up his throat, crystallizing on his lips. No, Neve sobbed. No, no, no. The curse, he managed through chattering teeth. I said, I loved. His eyes rolled back, his body seized, And then the Alpha King of Valdemir collapsed in her arms, his skin turning to ice beneath her hands. Even as she screamed for help, some part of her noticed that she felt no pain, no frost creeping through her own veins. The curse was killing him, but not her. She didn't understand why. "Help!" Neve screamed. "Someone help me! The king is dying!" The palace erupted into chaos. Healers came and went, their faces growing grimmer with each examination. The frost had spread across Rydian's entire torso, climbing toward his throat, creeping down his arms. His heartbeat was slow, too slow, each pulse weaker than the last. "There's nothing we can do," the head healer admitted, his voice heavy with defeat. "The curse is consuming him. At this rate, he'll be gone within days." Neve refused to accept it. She sat beside his bed, holding his frozen hand, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest. She hadn't slept in 3 days. She hadn't eaten. She had barely moved from this spot. "You can't die," she whispered. "Not now. Not when we're finally..." Finally what? She thought bitterly. Finally happy? Finally in love? That's exactly why he's dying. Because I was selfish. Because I couldn't keep my distance. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn. "Your Majesty." Lord Cressidon's voice slithered into the room. "You should rest. Conserve your strength. For the kingdom's sake, if not your own. Get out. The council is concerned. With the king incapacitated, someone must lead. And given your condition..." His eyes flickered to her stomach. "Perhaps it would be best if I assumed temporary control." Neve finally turned, her eyes blazing. "You'll assume nothing. I am Queen Regent. Any decisions about this kingdom go through me." Cressidon's smile didn't waver. "Of course, Your Majesty, I merely meant..." "I know exactly what you meant." She stood, facing him fully. "You've been waiting for this, planning for it. Every snide comment, every veiled threat. You wanted him to fall. I wanted what's best for Valdemir. You wanted the crown." For just a moment, something ugly flickered behind his polished mask. Then it vanished, replaced by wounded innocence. "I am grieved by your accusations, Your Majesty. Truly grieved. But given the circumstances, I'll forgive your harsh words." He bowed. "I'll leave you to your vigil." He was gone before she could respond. Neve sank back into her chair, shaking. Cressidon was circling, waiting for Rydian to die so he could seize power, and there was nothing she could do to stop him. Unless... A memory surfaced. Something Rydian had said about the curse. Every witch, every healer, every ancient text. Nothing. But he hadn't consulted every witch. He hadn't asked the one person who might know something about ancient curses, about bloodlines, about secrets that families buried for generations. Her mother. Neve's hands clenched. Ravenna had thrown her out to die, had called her a death omen, a curse. But Ravenna had also known things. Things she'd learned from her own mother and grandmother, secrets passed down through the Ashworth line. If anyone knew how to break an unbreakable curse, it might be her. She left you to freeze, Neve reminded herself. Why would she help you now? But she had to try. For Rydian, for their child, for everything. She kissed Rydian's frozen forehead. "I'll save you," she promised, "whatever it takes." The journey to Ashworth territory took 2 days. Neve traveled with a small guard moving fast, pushing through snowdrifts and frozen roads. Her pregnancy made the travel harder, but she refused to slow down. Every hour that passed was an hour closer to Rydian's death. The Ashworth estate looked smaller than she remembered. Grayer. The windows were dark despite the early evening hour. She dismounted and strode to the front door, pounding with her fist. A servant answered, his face going pale when he recognized her. Queen Neve, where is my mother?" "In her study, but my lady, she's not..." Neve pushed past him. She found Ravenna exactly where she expected. Seated by the fire, a glass of wine in hand, her face illuminated by flickering flames. She looked older than Neve remembered, haggard, as if the past months had aged her a decade. Mother. Ravenna's head snapped up. Something crossed her face, too fast to identify. Shock? Fear? Guilt? Neve. Her voice was barely a whisper. You're alive. No thanks to you. Neve stepped closer. The king is dying. A curse is killing him, and I need to know how to break it. How would I know anything about... Because you know things. You've always known things. About curses, about bloodlines, about wolves like me. Neve's voice shook with fury. You called me a death omen. You said my white wolf was a curse. But I've lived in that palace for months, and nothing I've touched has died except the man I love. So either you were wrong, or you were lying. Ravenna said nothing. Which is it, Mother? Were you wrong, or were you lying? The fire crackled. Wind howled beyond the windows, and then, slowly, Ravenna's composure crumbled. I was lying, she whispered. Neve's heart stopped. White wolves aren't death omens, Ravenna continued, her voice hollow. They never were. That's a superstition invented centuries ago to keep people afraid, to prevent them from discovering the truth. What truth? Ravenna's eyes finally met hers. White wolves are healers, Neve. Their fire isn't destructive, it's purifying. It can burn away curses, diseases, corruption. A tear tracked down her weathered cheek. They're the rarest wolves in existence and the most powerful. The room spun. Then why? Neve's voice cracked. Why did you throw me out? Why did you tell me I was cursed? Because he made me. Ravenna's hands were shaking. Lord Cressiden, he came to me months before you were cast out. He knew what you were, knew what you could do. And he knew that if you ever reached the Alpha King, you could break the curse that's been killing the Valdemir bloodline for generations. Cressiden, Neve breathed. He orchestrated this. He threatened Isadora, said he would have her killed if I didn't get rid of you. Ravenna was weeping openly now. Isadora didn't know. She mentioned your eyes innocently, not understanding what it meant. Cressiden had already been watching our family for months. He used what she said, twisted it, and when I hesitated, he threatened her life. I couldn't lose another child, Neve. I couldn't. So I did what he asked. I told myself the cold would take you quickly, that it would be merciful, that... Merciful? Neve's fury exploded. You left your daughter to die. I know. Ravenna collapsed into herself. I know what I did. I've lived with it every day since. But Cressiden has spies everywhere. If he learns you've discovered the truth, he won't have time to do anything. Neve was already moving toward the door. Because I'm going back to Valdemir, and I'm going to save my husband. Neve, wait. But Neve was already gone. She rode through the night, pushing her horse harder than she'd ever pushed anything. The cold bit at her face, her hands, but she barely felt it. All she could think about was Rydian, lying frozen in that bed, his life slipping away with every passing moment. I'm a healer, she thought, the truth still settling into her bones. My wolf isn't a curse, it's a cure. She reached the palace at dawn. The guards let her through without question, but their faces were grim. Whatever news awaited her inside, it wasn't good. She burst into Rydian's chambers to find the healers gathered around his bed, their expressions defeated. Cressiden stood in the corner, his face arranged in perfect mourning, but his eyes gleaming with barely concealed triumph. Your Majesty, the head healer said sadly. I'm so sorry. There's nothing more we can... Everyone out. They stared at her. Now. The healers scattered. Only Cressiden remained, his smile turning cold. My dear queen, you've returned just in time to say goodbye. How touching. I know what you did. Neve's voice was steady despite the rage burning through her. I know you threatened my mother. I know you wanted me dead because you knew what I could do. For the first time, Cressidan's mask slipped. Real fear flickered in his eyes. I don't know what lies your mother has. Guards! 2 soldiers burst through the door. Arrest Lord Cressidan for treason against the crown. You can't do this. Cressidan's composure shattered completely. I am the king's cousin. I am next in line for... You are nothing. Neve stepped toward him, and something in her eyes made him stumble backward. You conspired to murder me. You manipulated my family. You let the king die rather than allow anyone to save him. That is treason, and you will answer for it. The guards seized him. He struggled, shouting threats and denials, but they dragged him away without ceremony. Then Neve was alone with Ridian. She moved to his bedside and took his frozen hand. His skin was blue. His breath was barely visible. The frost had climbed past his throat, creeping toward his face. I'm here, she whispered, and I'm going to save you. She had never shifted willingly before. Her wolf had always been something to fear, something to suppress. But now she reached for it deliberately, calling it forward from the depths of her soul. The change took her like a wave. Bone shifted. Muscle reformed. Fur erupted across her skin, thick and soft and impossibly white. When it was done, a wolf stood where a woman had been, her coat gleaming like fresh snow, her eyes burning gold. She leaped onto the bed and pressed her body against Ridian's frozen form. Burn, she commanded herself. Burn away the curse. Burn away the ice. Bring him back to me. Heat poured out of her, not destructive heat but purifying warmth, the kind that melted winter and coaxed flowers from frozen ground. She felt it flowing into Ridian, pushing back the frost, thawing the ice that had imprisoned his heart for so long. The curse fought back. She felt it, ancient and malevolent, clinging to his bloodline with desperate fury. But she was stronger. Her fire was stronger. You will not have him, she thought fiercely. He is mine, and I will not let him go. The curse screamed as it burned. Generations of ice, centuries of frozen hearts, all of it dissolving beneath the heat of her love. And then, finally, it was gone. Neve collapsed, shifting back to human form, naked and trembling on the bed beside him. She had nothing left. Every ounce of strength had poured into breaking that curse. But Ridian's chest was moving, rising and falling with strong, steady breaths. His eyes fluttered open. Neve? His voice was hoarse but warm. Actually warm. She burst into tears. You're alive. She threw her arms around him, and for the first time his body wasn't cold. He was warm beneath her touch, warm like a normal wolf, warm like a man who had finally been freed. You're alive, and you're... Shh. His arms came around her, holding her tight. I'm here. The curse. I felt it break. Wonder filled his voice. I felt you burn it away. Neve, how did you... I'm a white wolf, she said through her tears. We're healers. We break curses. That's why my mother tried to kill me. Cressidan knew. He knew I could save you, so he wanted me dead. Ridian's arms tightened around her. The curse should have killed you too, he murmured. When I confessed my love, it should have struck us both. My wolf protected me, Neve realized. White wolves burn away curses. Even while I didn't know what I was, my fire was shielding me from the ice. Cressidan, he growled, already arrested. He'll face justice. Good. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, really look at her, for the first time with clear eyes and a heart that was finally free. You're beautiful, he breathed. Gods, Neve, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She laughed through her tears. You've never seen me before. I've seen everything that matters. He cupped her face, his hands warm, so wonderfully warm. I've seen your courage, your kindness, your strength. I've seen you face impossible odds and refuse to break. I've seen you love me even when loving me should have been fatal. His voice cracked. I love you, Neve. I love you. And for the first time in my life, I can say those words without fear. I love you too, she whispered. I never stopped, even when I should have. He kissed her then, deep and desperate. A kiss that tasted like freedom and futures, and everything they'd almost lost, 6 months later. The throne room was packed. Nobles, dignitaries, common folk, all gathered to witness the presentation of Valdmar's newest prince. Neve stood beside Ridian, their son cradled in her arms, a perfect bundle of dark hair and pale gray eyes. They had named him Calder. It meant cold water, a tribute to his father's past and a reminder of everything they had overcome. Lords and ladies of Valdmir, Ridian announced, his voice carrying through the hall. I present to you Prince Calder, heir to the throne, and son of a king and a white wolf, living proof that the curse that plagued our bloodline for generations has finally been broken. The crowd erupted in cheers. Neve looked out at the assembled faces and spotted a familiar figure near the back. Her sister, Isadora, stood beside Matilda, her expression tentative, hopeful. They had reconciled slowly over the past months, rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. Isadora had testified against Cressida at his trial, confirming his threats against her life. It hadn't erased the past, but it was a beginning. Their mother was not present. Ravenna had been stripped of her titles and exiled to a distant territory, her punishment for her role in the conspiracy. Neve had not spoken to her since that night at the Ashworth estate. Perhaps someday she would. Perhaps not. Some wounds took longer to heal than others, but here, now, holding her son, standing beside the man she loved, Neve felt something she had never truly experienced before. Peace. Ridian leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Happy? More than I ever thought possible. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip. Good, because I intend to make you even happier. Is that a promise? It's a vow. He pressed a kiss to her temple. From a king who finally has something worth living for. Neve looked down at Calder, at his tiny fingers and peaceful face, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The snow, the wolves, the curse, the love that should have killed them both, but instead set them free. Her mother had cast her out to die, but death had not found her. Love had.